if applying AI across a certain number of task activities is maybe faster, more efficient, but is not helping us improving the quality of what we do. It's a lot of complexity. It's potentially a lot of concerns as well for not really making our business better.
Hello and welcome to Control Alt Lead, the podcast from computing where we talk to IT leaders at the sharp edge of strategy. Today I'm joined by Bastien Parizot from Reckitt, and I will allow him to introduce himself. Bastien.
Hi, thanks Tom for having me today. I'm really glad to be on the podcast. I'm Bastien Parizot and I lead at Reckitt, who is doing brands like Nurofen, Durex, and plenty of others across the globe. I run there the AI transformation.
So obviously AI, huge topic in the industry at the moment. I think I'd like to start off by talking about this stat from MIT that was shared pretty widely last year, which says 95% of Gen AI pilots fail. I know Gen AI is not the be all and end all, but it is something that a lot of people are talking about. The tech industry does tend to praise fail fast. So is that a good thing, this high failure rate?
Yeah, I think it must be a good thing for plenty of companies, including us as well, right? I think failure is a way that tech companies usually, I think they call it differently, right? And I think it would be more learnings. I actually like to think it this way, which is I think there's plenty of good things into failing fast and testing a lot of new things. I do think when it comes to AI and Gen AI, there is a slightly different angle that we're trying to take, which is it's not only around failing fast so that we can have learnings, but it's also around thinking differently of what needs to be tested and why. And we like to think of proof of value at Reckitt and when we test about AI, because what we want is not only the learning of, hey, is it working for us and what we want to do, but actually, is it bringing value in line with what is our business? And I think for us, this is what we're trying to have. I think lastly, I would say perhaps is, I think if I remember well, the study you mentioned from the MIT, I think there was another piece in that sentence as well that says that 5% of the ones working, they are working because they are anchored in work processes. And I think that's a really important point as well.
Yeah, I agree. So a real focus on value and outcomes, which we are seeing a lot more of these days. You know, there's still that drive from the business level leadership, let's say, to just do AI. But I think now we see a lot more focus on doing AI with a specific outcome in mind rather than just putting it in and hoping it works.
Yeah, I think I mean it's a learning journey for everyone, and it will remain a learning journey because it evolves so fast. But I do agree that it's not about what AI can do on task, right? It's about how we look at AI can enable us to go faster or go deeper or actually do something better that we already had. So for us, we look at AI as an highlight or something that is strengthening a competitive advantage or helping us to get it back. So if you think of it this way, then you look at AI on activities that will help you to either spend more time to get your competitive advantage because AI is doing some task on the side that is helping you focus more of your time, or actually even better in the value of it and the business impact, how AI can actually help you innovate faster. Great example we have this, what we call this insight generation, where we use AI to connect about 40 plus data sources. And it helps us iterate a lot faster, a lot more on access to insight and creating product concept. That's an example of, for me, AI helping us doing your business even better, and not just AI for the sake of AI.
That actually is perhaps something that we should pick up on. How has Reckitt rolled out AI today? What are you using Gen AI for? Are you looking at agentic AI? I'd love to know.
Yeah, so the approach we've taken is, and it's a bet or an intentional choice we've made since we started in early 24 here when Gen AI came to say, all right, we paused a little bit and we said, what can AI and Gen AI together do for us? And we had this conviction that looking at work processes was one way of applying AI and really sharpening those processes, shortening them, helping us innovate and execute faster. And so with this in mind, we also knew that we had tons of learning, right? Let's stay humble in that journey. As I said, there's tons of learnings to be had on how do we scale AI, how do we make sure we test the proof of value, and so on. And so because of that, we entered in a function by function approach that now we are accelerating. We started in marketing, we went on to R&D, and now we're talking about other functions. And so the aim was to look at, okay, in marketing, if you think of access to insight, if you think of looking at the brand performance, the analysis of the brand performance that we have on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, or even on creating a lot of assets, how can AI and Gen AI help us there? And with that, we deployed about 10 solutions to about 1,000 marketers. So we really wanted to have scale and make sure that we are helping ourselves with AI to do a better job every day. So that's how we've been looking at AI at Reckitt so far.
So the fact that you're going, with different departments, it sounds like you're really trying to hit the whole end-to-end value chain.
Yeah, we've had this, and this term was used a little bit externally as well in some of the content we've co-created, which is deep and narrow. So the aim was to look at how do we actually go deep and narrow, and now we're trying to accelerate that. But the aim was to look at work processes. So if I think of from an idea to a brief and to a product concept, you would have two type of processes from there. One, which is how do you get your brief to your agency partners and going to the asset creation and so on. And then the other one is how do you also create a lot more of product concept, as I was saying before. And so with this, you can think of two applications of AI, right? And so this is helping you all along the journey on getting a better analysis of your past data, but also trying to predict a little bit some of the behaviors from your audience, for instance, as well as helping you generating the brief or generating the content. On product concept is the same. How do you iterate a lot faster? How do you create concepts that are really developed at the back of all of the insights you can get internally or externally? So this is the type of AI we've been embedding in day-to-day work. For us, it is only landing if it's being embedded into the day-to-day work of all of our people. And that's where you integrate AI into your core operating model rather than having an AI factory sitting on the side and doing pilots or tests. FOMO was the worst enemy of AI adoption for enterprise.
Yeah.
I actually genuinely believe that. Also because like how many deep seek type of situation we have and we are going to have where people are coming to us and saying, "Oh yes, but we have the latest," and so on. But this is not how you build scale, right?
We hear a lot of stories about AI tools being provided, but adoption being slow because people don't understand where they get the value from. They don't get the training. Uh, what has the reaction been like at Reckitt?
Yeah, and I think it's we've had similar reactions as well in the sense of it is hard to go and change completely the way you work so that you adopt a tool that is, for instance, doing a lot of data creation or analysis that you were doing on your own before, right? So of course, adoption comes with a big challenge. I would say where we see this is really well adopted is where we have uh, all of the data foundations at the back of those AI applications that have been cleaned up and really helping everyone, and where it's really well embedded into the jobs and the ways of doing things, right? I would say overall, it's more positive than not for us. And what we've seen and the surprise that I had maybe as we deployed those applications, aside from some of those challenges, was more that the more it was practical and helping people doing what they truly enjoy, the more actually we get a positive adoption and feedback on the applications. If I take an example, as you have an assistant brand manager or someone coming in the company for the first 2 years, I think no one is excited about having to curate data for 3 days if you want to write a report or even writing a different report every time. And so you bring the ability to cut 70% of that so that that person can enjoy learning about the business and actually going into the business decision discussion that is really moving the needle for your brand or for your category. We've seen that reaction being really positive.
Okay, excellent. Um, Also, a question about Reckitt's business. You work in a very, sort of specific industry, um, although a huge number of well-known brand names and products. So when it comes to using AI, are you looking at LLMs, so large language models, or are you looking at or using a more focused system trained on industry-specific data, like a small language model?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's coming up more and more, right? LLMs and SLMs and that question. To be very frank, what we're using today are the models that we have out there, and where we're trying to put our efforts on three things instead. One is how do we capture the context and the tacit knowledge that we have inside Reckitt that helps us to have the output that we want. The second one is, of course, how do we actually agree on the output we want to use? Because we also know that once you agree on the output, you need to mitigate for the potential hallucinations and make sure that the output is consistent, reliable, and so on. And of course, with that comes a lot of work on the data being structured and structured. So the reality is that we are using the OpenAIs and the Geminis of this world, and we are spending a lot of time and energy into making sure the context, the knowledge, the outputs, and the data is really into the instructions, into the context that we can have in the models. We haven't yet deployed any application that is requiring or for which we would get the benefits of a small language model. But I can see how it might be coming up at some point in certain more specific use cases that we might have that small language models could help either scaling faster or having a more distributed approach to some use cases. We're not there yet.
So that's something that if you were to look at it, you would do it only in specific use cases rather than across the business.
Yeah, I think so. Or when I say use cases, maybe it's less of the use case and maybe it's more around if we want to have a different approach in scaling up and or enabling the organization to have a certain level of higher level of autonomy in certain aspects. Maybe that's where we should look at it. But for now, there's so much energy and work coming into leveraging the existing models, which are really excellent, into making sure this is being helpful for us with our approach function by function. It's a lot of work to capture the knowledge that everyone had in their minds and actually codify that into an application.
One other question for you, Bastien, while we have time. Employees have concerns about AI bringing value. Where can AI be best used, and in which use cases could it actually perhaps not hurt, but hinder or diminish that value? Where is it best to sort of keep AI reserved at the moment?
That's a very broad question, and I wish I had the right answer here, but I can give you the answer of what we see from the learnings we have, right? And and maybe it's helpful if I frame the way we look at whether or not AI brings value for us. Coming back to the proof of value I was mentioning earlier on the podcast here. So we look at three things when we look at AI, right? There is the obvious one, which is can it be done, right? If you look at the like specific activities, so we look at all of the activities we have in marketing and R&D and so on. Can it be done, or can it be simplified with AI? Can it be helpful to have AI? The second one is that is it giving us back time that we can invest into the business? So again, my example on an assistant brand manager doing a lot of curation of the data is a great example of that. And the most important point do we get a higher quality of what we are getting today by doing it the way we do? That last question is the most important for us. Because if applying AI across a certain number of tasks, activities is maybe faster, more efficient, but is not helping us improving the quality of what we do, actually, this is where we see it's a lot of investment, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of complexity, it's potentially a lot of concerns as well for not really making our business better. And so, again, if I go back to some of the examples that I was sharing before, insight to product concept, we see the value of that. We see the quality is actually higher when you have human plus AI versus human only. When we look at generating documents that could have taken tens or hundreds of hours, and we can do it in 2 hours, it helps us to actually spend a lot more time into other valuable aspects of our business. This is where it helps. Applying AI because we can, not because it makes a difference for us, is where we see that it's adding a lot of concerns, it's adding a lot of challenges, and probably taking some of the resources that we should be spending somewhere else.
Okay, so there's this. It sounds like a very simple and straightforward checklist to follow. Then, can it be done? Does it add value? Is it higher? Is the output higher quality? Is that just something that you use across the business whenever you're looking at rolling out an AI system?
Absolutely. And I mean, of course, I have nothing against pilots. We should have pilots and proof of value again alongside. But we've also tested things where it's working, it can be done faster, but if it's not done better, we just killed it. Because again, our business is not to be a tech company. Our business is to make sure that we are as efficient, as competitive, as effective as we can on doing well what we know how to do and selling our products, building great products and selling them to the right consumers in the right markets and the right time. And so if it doesn't allow us to have this consumer obsession or to execute with excellence, why should we do it?
Brilliant. Bastien, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about Reckitt's AI rollout.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to have that conversation.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Control Alt Lead. We've got plenty more fantastic episodes coming up, including with IT leaders at OpenAI and Motorway. Until then, you can always follow Computing on LinkedIn, YouTube, and WhatsApp for more great content like this, and head to computing.co.uk for more interviews, research, and analysis. And if you're an IT leader with an opinion or a story to tell, please do get in touch at tomallen@thechannelcompany.com. Until next time.